The little girl's lips were purple. Her fingers had stopped moving. Behind a dumpster at a gas station in Oklahoma, 5-year-old Lily Bennett was dying, and her aunt had driven away 40 minutes ago. Garrett Sullivan didn't stop for children. He stopped for coffee. But when he heard that sound, that thin, broken whimper from behind the building, everything changed. What 197 Hells Angels did next would expose a guardian who smiled for cameras and starved children in closets. And the ending will remind you that sometimes the gentlest justice rides the loudest motorcycles. If you believe invisible children deserve to be seen, subscribe now. Comment your city below and stay until the end, because Lily's story is about to change how you see everyone around you. Garrett Sullivan killed his engine at 11:43 p.m. The Clearwater fuel stop sat alone on Route 412, halfway between Tulsa and nowhere. December wind cut across the parking lot like it had a personal grudge. Garrett pulled off his gloves and rubbed his hands together. His knuckles were stiff. His back ached from 3 hours on the road. He was 51 years old, too old to be riding in this weather, too stubborn to admit it. The neon sign above the gas pumps flickered. Hot coffee 24/7. That was all Garrett wanted. Coffee, gas, maybe a bathroom that wasn't frozen solid. He swung his leg over the bike and stretched. His leather jacket creaked. The Hells Angels patch on his back caught the fluorescent light. A skull with wings, faded from years of highway wind. Inside, a young cashier in a red vest looked up from his phone. His name tag said, Derek. He was maybe 22, with the soft face of someone who'd never had to fight for anything. Derek's eyes went to the patch first, then to Garrett's face, then back to the phone. Garrett didn't take it personally. People saw the leather and made assumptions. He'd stopped explaining himself 20 years ago. Coffee, Garrett said. Derek pointed without looking up. Back wall, creams by the register. Garrett walked past the chip aisle, past the motor oil, past the dusty rack of sunglasses no one ever bought. The coffee smelled burnt. He poured it anyway. That's when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the night. Tap, tap, pause, like someone knocking on plastic with a weak hand. Garrett froze. The coffee pot hovered over his cup. Tap, tap. It came from outside. Behind the building, he set the pot down and walked toward the back door. Derek didn't notice. Derek was watching something on his phone with the sound off. The back door opened onto a narrow alley. Dumpsters, cardboard boxes, the smell of old grease and frozen garbage. And something else, a shape against the dumpster. Small, too small. Garrett's heart dropped into his stomach. He moved closer. His boots crunched on ice. The shape didn't move. Hey, he said. His voice came out rough. Hey, kid. The shape stirred. A face turned toward him. A little girl, blonde hair matted with frost, blue eyes that couldn't quite focus, lips the color of a bruise. She was wearing a summer dress, pink with white flowers. No coat, no shoes. Her bare feet were tucked under her legs, and her arms were wrapped around herself so tight it looked like she was trying to hold her own bones together. Jesus Christ, Garrett whispered. The girl's mouth moved. No sound came out. Garrett dropped to his knees. The cold bit through his jeans immediately. He didn't care. Hey, look at me. Can you hear me? Her eyes drifted, then focused, just barely. Please, she whispered. The word came out broken, like ice cracking. Please don't tell her. Garrett's hands were shaking, not from the cold. Don't tell who, sweetheart? The girl's body convulsed, a shiver so violent it looked like a seizure. Then nothing. The shivering stopped. That was worse. Garrett knew that was worse. When a body stops shivering in the cold, it means the body is giving up. Okay, he said. Okay, we're going inside, right now. He shrugged off his riding jacket. The cold hit his arms like a slap. He wrapped the jacket around the girl, all 40 pounds of her, and lifted. She weighed nothing, like picking up a bundle of sticks wrapped in frozen cotton. "Stay with me," Garrett said. "You hear me? Stay with me." He carried her around the building, through the front door. The bell chimed. 3 bright notes that had no business being cheerful. Derek looked up from his phone. His face went white. "Call 911, Garrett said. "Now." Derek didn't move. "I said now." Derek fumbled for the phone behind the register. His hands were shaking so bad he nearly dropped it twice. "I need an ambulance," Derek stammered into the phone. "Clearwater fuel stop, Route 412. There's a kid. I don't know, she's blue. She's really blue." Garrett lowered the girl onto the bench by the space heater. He kept his jacket around her. He grabbed a Mylar blanket from the emergency kit behind the counter. He knew where it was because he'd worked a station like this 30 years ago, and wrapped that around her too. "Hey," he said softly, "what's your name?" The girl's eyes fluttered. Her lips moved. "Lily." "Okay, Lily, that's good. I'm Garrett. You're safe now." Her hand moved under the jacket, reached for something at her chest. A tarnished silver locket on a broken chain. "Mommy," Lily whispered. "Your mommy's in there?" Lily nodded, once, like even that was too much effort. "Okay, you hold on to that. You hold on tight." Lily's fingers closed around the locket. Her eyes started to close. "No," Garrett said. "No, Lily. Eyes open. Look at me." Her eyes opened again, barely. "I'm tired." "I know, but you can't sleep yet. You gotta stay with me." "She said I could sleep." Garrett's blood went cold. "Who said that?" "Aunt Brenda. She said wait here and I could sleep after." "Your aunt left you here?" Lily nodded. Her eyes were drifting again. "When? How long ago?" "I don't know. The stars came out." The stars came out. That could mean anything from 20 minutes to 3 hours. In this temperature, even 20 minutes could be fatal. "Why?" Garrett asked. "Why did she leave you here?" Lily's face crumpled, something between fear and confusion. "I ate the crackers. I wasn't supposed to. She said I had to learn." Garrett felt something in his chest twist so hard he thought it might snap. "Learn what, sweetheart?" "That food costs money, and I don't earn money, so I don't get to eat." The front door banged open. 2 paramedics rushed in. A woman with gray hair and steady hands, Rosa, her badge said, and a younger man hauling equipment. Rosa took one look at Lily and her face changed. Not panic, worse, recognition. "Core temp first," Rosa said. "Get me the warming pads." The younger paramedic pulled out a thermometer, slid it under Lily's tongue, waited. The number came up, 91.2. Rosa exhaled through her teeth. "We're on the edge. Another 15 minutes and we'd be talking organ failure." They lifted Lily onto the stretcher. Garrett stepped back, but Lily's hand shot out and grabbed his sleeve. "Don't go," she whispered, "please." Garrett looked at Rosa. Rosa nodded. "You can ride in front." They loaded Lily into the ambulance. Garrett climbed in the passenger seat. The driver hit the lights and they pulled out of the parking lot, leaving Derek standing alone by the register, phone still in his hand. In the back, Rosa worked fast. Warming blankets, IV line, oxygen. "Lily," Rosa said. "Lily, I need you to talk to me. Can you do that?" Lily's voice was thin. "Am I in trouble?" "No, baby, you're not in trouble. Aunt Brenda says I'm always in trouble. She says I cost too much." Rosa's hands paused for just a second, then kept moving. "Where do you live, Lily?" "The house with the blue door. Maple Ridge, number 4892. "And your aunt takes care of you?" Lily's whole body tensed. Even through the warming blankets, Garrett could see it from the front seat. "She counts the food," Lily whispered. "She puts locks on everything. If I take something, she says I'm stealing." Rosa and her partner exchanged a look. "Lily," Rosa said carefully, "where do you sleep at home?" Silence. "Lily?" "The closet." Rosa's jaw tightened. The closet? It's small, but Aunt Brenda says I should be grateful. She says some kids don't have anywhere. Garrett turned in his seat. Lily, how long have you lived with your aunt? Lily's hand found her locket again, gripped it tight. Since Mommy and Daddy went to heaven. When was that? I don't remember, I was little. 18 months, that's what the reports would say later. 18 months of locks on cabinets. 18 months of sleeping in a closet. 18 months of being told she wasn't worth the food she ate. But Garrett didn't know that yet. All he knew was the look on this child's face. The way she flinched when someone said the word aunt. The way she apologized for existing. St. Francis Medical Center lit up the windshield. They pulled into the emergency bay. Doctors and nurses met them at the door. Lily was wheeled inside, still clutching her locket, still looking back at Garrett like he was the only solid thing in the world. A nurse stopped him at the door. Sir, you'll need to wait. I found her. I'm not leaving. The nurse looked at his patch, hesitated. Family only in the trauma bay. She doesn't have family. She has an aunt who left her to freeze. The nurse's face changed. Wait here. I'll get the doctor. Garrett waited. The hallway smelled like disinfectant and fear. 10 minutes later, a woman in a white coat approached. Her name tag said Dr. Amara Okonkwo. She had kind eyes and a firm handshake. You're the one who found her? Yeah. You saved her life. Another 15 minutes and we'd be having a very different conversation. Garrett nodded. How is she? Stable, for now. We're warming her slowly. Her fingers and toes have some frostbite, but she should keep them all. Good. Dr. Okonkwo studied his face. There's more. I figured. She's malnourished, severely. Her bones are visible. Her stomach is distended. There are old bruises on her arms and back, patterns that don't match normal play. Garrett felt his hands curl into fists. And she keeps talking about a closet, Dr. Okonkwo continued, about locks on cabinets, about earning food. Her aunt, Garrett said. That's what she says. You believe her? Dr. Okonkwo's eyes were steady. Children don't invent specific details. They don't make up padlocks in closets and learning to earn meals. Yes, I believe her. So what happens now? We've called social services. They're sending someone. But Mr. Sullivan, Garrett, there's something you should know. She pulled out her phone, showed him a screen. When we searched for emergency contacts, we found her file. Lily Bennett, 5 years old, parents deceased. Guardian is Brenda Holloway, her maternal aunt. Okay. Brenda Holloway is on the board of 3 local charities. She volunteers at the food bank. She teaches Sunday school at First Baptist. Garrett stared at her. She's a pillar of the community, Dr. Okonkwo said flatly. And according to 3 separate wellness checks over the past year, Lily is a happy, healthy child in a loving home. 3 checks? Neighbors called. A teacher called. Someone from the church called. Every time the county came out. Every time they closed the case. How? Because Brenda Holloway smiles very well. Because she bakes cookies when visitors come. Because she knows exactly how to perform care without actually providing it. Garrett thought about Lily's face when she heard the word aunt. The way her whole body went rigid. She's done this before, Garrett said. It wasn't a question. Dr. Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. I don't know, but I've been doing this for 23 years, and I've never seen a child this afraid of the person who's supposed to protect her. What do you need from me? Stay, if you're willing. She keeps asking for the man who found her. You're the only person she trusts right now. Garrett nodded. He walked to the waiting area, sat down in a plastic chair, pulled out his phone. He stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he called the only number that mattered. It rang twice. Torch, it's midnight. This better be good. Dominic Reyes, road name Judge, was the president of the Oklahoma chapter. 61 years old, former Marine, voice like gravel and whiskey. Dom, I need help. What kind? The kind that rides. Silence on the line. Talk to me. Garrett told him. The gas station, the dumpster, the little girl with purple lips in a summer dress, the aunt who counted crackers in locked closets. When he finished, Judge was quiet for a long time. St. Francis? Yeah. How many brothers you need? All of them. Another pause. Then, done. Dom, we do this clean, legal, by the book. Brother, I taught you the book. Get some coffee. We'll be there by sunrise. The line went dead. Garrett put his phone away and looked down the hall toward the pediatric ward. Behind one of those doors, a 5-year-old girl was fighting for her life. And somewhere in this city, an aunt was probably checking her phone, wondering if the problem had solved itself yet. But Brenda Holloway didn't know what was coming. She didn't know that in 4 hours, 197 motorcycles would fill that parking lot. She didn't. At 2:47 a.m., Lily woke up screaming. Garrett was in the hallway when he heard it, a sound that cut through the quiet hospital like glass breaking. He was on his feet before he knew he was moving. A nurse blocked the door. Sir, you can't. She's asking for me, listen. Through the door, Lily's voice. Where is he? Where's the man? He said he wouldn't leave. The nurse hesitated, then stepped aside. Garrett pushed through. Lily was sitting up in the hospital bed, wires and tubes surrounding her, eyes wild with terror. The warming blankets had slipped off. Her thin arms were shaking. Hey, Garrett said. Hey, I'm here. Lily's head snapped toward him. For a second, she didn't seem to recognize him. Then her whole body sagged. You came back. I said I would. He pulled a chair to her bedside, sat down, didn't touch her. She flinched when people moved too fast, and he'd already learned that. Bad dream? He asked. Lily shook her head slowly. I thought I was in the closet again. It gets dark there, really dark, and sometimes she forgets to let me out. Garrett felt his jaw clench. How long does she forget? I don't know, a long time, until I'm really quiet. She says quiet girls get out faster. Lily, can I ask you something? She nodded. Where are your mommy and daddy? Lily's hand went to her locket. She opened it slowly. Inside, a tiny photograph, a man and woman, smiling, squinting against the sun. They went to heaven, Lily said. In the car accident, I was in my car seat. The policeman said I was lucky. She didn't sound like she felt lucky. When did that happen? I was 4, I think, maybe 3.5. Aunt Brenda came to the hospital and said she would take care of me. And that's when you went to live with her? Lily nodded. She was nice at first. She bought me ice cream. She said I could call her Mama Brenda if I wanted. What changed? Lily's fingers tightened on the lock. The money came. Garrett leaned forward slightly. What money? I don't know. Papers came in the mail. Aunt Brenda read them and got really happy. Then she got really mad. She said the money was supposed to be more. She said I cost too much to feed. When did that happen? A long time ago, before the closet, before the locks. Garrett's mind was racing. Insurance money, settlement, trust fund. Something had come to Brenda Holloway after Lily's parents died, and it hadn't been enough for her. Lily, has anyone else ever come to the house? Anyone who asked questions? Lily thought about it. The lady with the clipboard, she came 3 times. What happened when she came? Aunt Brenda cleaned everything. She unlocked the food. She made me wear nice clothes. She told me if I said anything wrong, I would sleep outside. And you believed her? Lily's eyes filled with tears. She did it once. When I told my Sunday school teacher I was hungry, Aunt Brenda smiled and said I was being dramatic. Then that night she put me outside until I said I was sorry. Garrett's hands were shaking. He pressed them flat against his thighs. You're not going back there, Lily. You understand me? You're never going back. But she's my family. Family doesn't lock you in closets. Family doesn't count crackers. Family doesn't leave you to freeze. Lily stared at him with those blue eyes, so old in such a young face. Then what is family? Garrett didn't have an answer. Not yet. But he was about to show her. At 4:15 a.m., the first motorcycles arrived. Garrett heard them before he saw them. A low rumble that grew into a roar, then cut off in unison like someone had thrown a switch. He walked to the window at the end of the hall. The parking lot was filling up. Headlights, leather, chrome catching the glow from the emergency room sign. One bike, then 5, then 20. They kept coming. Judge was first through the hospital doors. He'd ridden 140 miles in 3 hours, and his face showed it. Windburned, exhausted, and absolutely steady. Where is she? Judge asked. Pediatric ward, room 312. She okay? For now. Judge nodded. Then he looked at Garrett, really looked at him. You did good, brother. I didn't do anything. I just found her. You didn't look away. These days, that's everything. Other brothers filtered in behind Judge. Garrett knew most of them by road name, Ledger, their accountant retired from 30 years at PricewaterhouseCoopers, who looked more like a librarian than a biker. Doc, former ER physician who'd traded his hospital scrubs for a Harley and never looked back. Wire, youngest in the chapter at 34, but he could crack any computer system built after 1990. And Reverend, white hair, quiet voice, former military chaplain who'd held dying soldiers in 3 different wars. If anyone could reach a traumatized child, it was him. Judge gathered them in the hospital chapel. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and old hymnals. Here's what we know, Judge said. 5-year-old girl, parents dead 18 months. Guardian is the aunt, Brenda Holloway, pillar of the community, volunteers at 3 charities, teaches Sunday school. And she left the kid to freeze, Ledger said. She left the kid to freeze. Silence. We do this clean, Judge continued. Legal, documented, no exceptions. What about the cops? Someone asked. I called Sheriff Hutchins on the way. He's sending a deputy. We coordinate, not compete. Wire raised his hand. I can start pulling records tonight. Property, financials, employment history. If there's a pattern, I'll find it. Judge nodded. Do it, but nothing that gets thrown out in court. We need everything by the book. Ledger spoke up. I'll need access to the trust documents. If there's money involved, and there's always money involved, I want to trace every dollar. Talk to the social worker when she gets here. Doc cleared his throat. I'll coordinate with the medical team. Make sure the discharge notes don't underplay anything. I've seen it happen. Hospitals trying to avoid paperwork, and suddenly severe malnutrition becomes underweight. Good. Reverend was last. His voice was soft. And the child? Judge looked at Garrett. She trusts him, Judge said. Garrett stays close, but Reverend, you're backup. If she needs someone to talk to, someone safe, that's you. Reverend nodded. Judge looked around the room. 12 men. Not young, not naive, not looking for a fight, looking for justice. All in favor? Every hand rose. Then let's get to work. At 6:02 a.m., Brenda Holloway walked into St. Francis Medical Center. Garrett saw her from across the lobby. Blonde hair perfectly styled, cross necklace glinting against her sweater, a casserole dish in her hands, because of course she'd bring food. Of course she'd perform concern. She approached the front desk with a smile that could have sold real estate. Good morning. I'm here for my niece, Lily Bennett. I got a call that she was brought in last night. The receptionist typed something, frowned. Ma'am, I'm showing a visitor restriction on that room. Brenda's smile flickered, just for a second. I'm sorry, I'm her guardian. There must be a mistake. Let me call someone from pediatrics. Brenda waited. Her fingers tapped against the casserole dish. Tap, tap, tap. Garrett watched from the hallway. He watched the smile stay fixed even as her eyes went hard. He watched her scan the waiting room, the leather cuts, the patches, The men who looked like they'd been there all night. Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes did. A nurse appeared, then a security guard, then a woman in a blazer. Miriam Foster, the social worker Garrett had met an hour earlier. "Miss Holloway," Miriam said, "would you mind stepping into my office? I'd rather see my niece." "I understand, but there are some questions." "Questions about what?" "About the circumstances of her admission." Brenda's voice went sweet, patient, the voice of someone explaining something to a child. "Lily has episodes. She wanders. She gets confused. I've tried everything. Therapists, medications, routines. She just slips away sometimes. She was found behind a dumpster in a summer dress. In December. I know. I've been driving all over town looking for her. I called the police hours ago." "Miss Holloway, we have no record of that call." The first crack in the mask. "They must not have logged it properly. You know how these things are." "Actually, I don't. Can you tell me what time you made the call?" It was late, maybe 10, 11. "And when did you last see Lily?" Another crack, smaller, but there. "Around 9, she was in her room. I went to check on her and she was gone." "Her room?" "Yes. Not a closet?" Brenda's smile froze. "I'm sorry." "Lily says she sleeps in a closet." "She's confused. I told you, she has episodes." "She also says the food is locked, that she has to earn meals." That's not." Brenda's voice went sharp. "She's a child. Children make things up." "She's also severely malnourished. She has frostbite on her toes. She has bruises that don't match normal play." Brenda set down the casserole dish, slowly. "I'd like to see my lawyer." "That's your right, but until this is sorted out, Lily is under protective custody." "You can't do that." "Actually, I can, and I have." Brenda's eyes swept the room again, landed on Garrett, held. Something passed between them, a recognition, an understanding. She knew. She knew this wasn't going to be like the other times. The visits from concerned neighbors, the teachers' reports, the clipboard ladies she'd charmed with cookies in clean kitchens. This time was different. This time someone had seen too much. And this time, there were witnesses. At 7:34 a.m., Lily asked to see Garrett. He found her sitting up in bed, coloring on a paper the nurse had given her. She was drawing something, a house with a blue door and a lot of locks. "Hey, kiddo." She looked up. "Is she here?" Garrett didn't lie. "Yeah, but she can't get to you." "She's really good at getting to people." "Not today." Lily went back to her drawing, added more locks to the door. "Garrett?" "Yeah?" "Am I in trouble?" He crouched beside her bed. "Why would you be in trouble?" "Because I ran away. Because I told about the closet. Because I talked to strangers." "Lily, look at me." She looked up. Her blue eyes were glassy with exhaustion. "You didn't do anything wrong. Not one thing. You understand me?" "But Aunt Brenda is the one who did wrong. Not you. Never you." Lily's lower lip trembled. "She said no one would believe me. She said I tell stories and people know I tell stories." "Do you tell stories?" "No, I just tell what happened." "Then that's not a story, that's the truth." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then she reached under her pillow and pulled out something small. The locket. She handed it to Garrett. "Can you keep it safe, just for now? I'm scared I'll lose it again." Garrett took the tarnished silver in his palm. It weighed almost nothing. "I'll guard it with my life," he said. Lily almost smiled. It was the closest thing to joy he'd seen on her face. "Garrett?" "Yeah?" "What happens now?" He didn't know, not exactly, but he knew this. Somewhere out in the parking lot, 197 men were waiting. Somewhere in this hospital, a social worker was documenting evidence. Somewhere in this city, a sheriff's deputy was pulling records and bank statements and things Brenda Holloway thought she'd buried. What happens now? Now, Garrett said, we tell the truth, and we don't stop until everyone hears it. Lily picked up her crayon again, started drawing something new, a motorcycle, and standing next to it, a little girl with yellow hair and blue eyes, holding hands with someone bigger, someone safe. That's me, she said, pointing to the girl. And who's that next to you? Lily didn't answer right away. She just drew a halo above the bigger figure's head. But Garrett knew. Some kids drew angels with wings. Lily drew hers with a leather jacket. The drawing sat on the hospital tray table for the rest of the morning. Lily refused to let anyone move it. Every nurse who came to check her vitals, every doctor who adjusted her IV, every social worker who asked another careful question, they all saw that crayon picture of a little girl holding hands with an angel in a leather jacket. Garrett saw it too. Every time he looked at it, something shifted in his chest. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. By 8:15 a.m., Wire had taken over a corner of the hospital cafeteria. His laptop was open, 3 phones lined up beside it, and a cup of coffee sat untouched and going cold. His fingers moved across the keyboard like he was playing an instrument he'd mastered decades ago. Ledger pulled up a chair beside him. What have you got? Brenda Holloway, 41 years old, born in Muskogee, moved to Broken Arrow 12 years ago. Works part-time at a real estate office, but hasn't closed a sale in 18 months. So where's the money coming from? Wire pulled up another screen. That's where it gets interesting. Lily's parents, James and Laura Bennett, died in a car accident on I-44 in June of last year. Wrongful death lawsuit against a trucking company. Settlement came through 4 months later. How much? $487,000. Ledger let out a low whistle. And it went into a trust for Lily? Supposedly. But look at this. Wire turned the laptop so Ledger could see. Monthly withdrawals started small, $2,000 here, $3,000 there. Then they got bigger, $10,000 in September, $15,000 in October, $20,000 in November. What's the total? Wire's jaw tightened. $289,000. Gone. Gone where? A boat, a down payment on a lake cabin, recurring charges at Choctaw Casino, cosmetic procedures at a clinic in Tulsa. Wire scrolled down. And here's the thing. The trust was supposed to be managed by a third-party administrator. But 6 months ago, Brenda filed paperwork to become the sole trustee. And someone approved that? Judge named Harold Whitmore, signed off without a hearing. Ledger rubbed his eyes. So she's draining the kid's inheritance while starving her in a closet. It gets worse. How does it get worse? Wire pulled up a new window. Browser history. Searches. Ledger read them out loud, his voice going flat. Hypothermia survival time, child. How long before frozen body found? Accidental death investigation process. The cafeteria seemed to go quiet around them. When were these searches made? Ledger asked. November 14th, November 22nd, December 3rd. 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. And look at the dates she circled on her calendar. Wire showed him a photograph someone had texted over. A calendar page with January 8th circled 3 times in red ink. Notes in the margin. Insurance policy active 18 months. Accident must look natural. Ledger sat back in his chair. She wasn't just neglecting that kid. She was planning to kill her. And make it look like an accident, just like she did before. Before? What do you mean before? Wire opened another file. Connor Walsh, 7 years old. Foster placement with Brenda Holloway 3 years ago. Died of accidental exposure during a winter storm. Life insurance policy for $75,000. Beneficiary, Brenda Holloway. The words hung in the air like smoke. She's done this before, Ledger said. She's done this before, and she almost got away with it again. Garrett appeared at the table. He'd heard the last part. His face was stone. Where's Judge? Chapel, meeting with the sheriff's deputy. Garrett turned and walked away without another word. In the chapel, Judge was speaking with a man in uniform, Deputy Marcus Webb, mid-40s, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too many cases like this and not enough justice. "We've got enough for a warrant," Webb was saying. "The medical evidence alone would do it. But if what your people are finding holds up..." "It holds up," Garrett said from the doorway. Both men turned. "She searched how to make a child's death look accidental 3 times. She's got a previous foster kid who died the same way. And she's been draining Lily's trust fund for 18 months. Webb's expression shifted. "You have documentation?" "Wire's putting together a packet right now. Chain of custody, timestamps, everything you need." Judge nodded. "We're not cowboys, Deputy. We're witnesses. We document. We support. We don't interfere." Webb studied them both for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Judge Whitaker. We're going to need that warrant fast." The warrant came through at 9:47 a.m. Judge Elaine Whitaker, no relation to the judge who'd approved the trust transfer, signed it during a video call from her home office. Her face was grim as she read the affidavit. "Emergency custody is already in effect," she said. "Search warrant covers the residence at 4892 Maple Ridge Drive. You're looking for evidence of confinement, neglect, and financial exploitation." "Understood, Your Honor." "And Deputy Webb, I want this done right. No shortcuts, no contaminated evidence. If this woman did what these documents suggest, I want her to spend the rest of her life in prison." "Yes, ma'am." The call ended. Webb looked at Judge. "You want to ride along? Try to stop us." The convoy left St. Francis at 10:15 a.m. Deputy Webb's cruiser led the way. Behind it, 4 motorcycles, Garrett, Judge, Ledger, and Wire. A family services investigator named Tessa Brandt followed in her county car. They drove through Broken Arrow in silence, past the strip malls and the chain restaurants and the churches with their parking lots full of Sunday overflow, past the elementary school where Lily had been enrolled for 3 months before Brenda pulled her out for homeschooling, past the neighbors who'd seen a child in dirty clothes hauling heavy bags and told themselves it wasn't their business. 4892 Maple Ridge Drive looked like every other house on the street. Blue door, trimmed hedges, a welcome mat that said, "Blessed." Webb knocked. No answer. He knocked again. The door opened. Brenda Holloway stood there in yoga pants and a designer sweatshirt, her hair still damp from a shower. Her eyes went to the badge first, then to the leather cuts behind Webb, then back to the badge. "Can I help you, Deputy?" "Brenda Holloway, we have a warrant to search these premises." "A warrant? For what?" "Ma'am, please step aside." Brenda didn't move. "This is harassment. I already spoke to someone at the hospital. My niece has problems. She wanders. She makes up stories." "Ma'am, step aside." For a moment, Garrett thought she might refuse, thought she might slam the door and force them to break it down. But Brenda was smarter than that. She'd survived this long by knowing when to fight and when to smile. She smiled now. "Of course," she said, stepping back. "I have nothing to hide." They moved through the house in pairs. Webb and Tessa took the main floor. Garrett and Judge took the basement. Ledger and Wire started on the office. The kitchen was first. Garrett saw it immediately. The refrigerator with a chain looped through the handles and a combination lock holding it shut. The pantry door with a padlock. Tessa photographed everything. Click, click, click. "Ms. Holloway," Webb said carefully, "why are the food storage areas locked?" Brenda's smile flickered. "Lily has issues. She hoards food. She binges. It's a medical condition. Her therapist recommended structure." "What therapist?" "I'd have to look up the name." "Please do." Garrett walked down the hallway, past family photos that showed Brenda at charity events, at church functions, at the food bank she volunteered at. In every photo, she was smiling. In none of them was Lily. He found the closet. It was under the stairs. A door with a deadbolt on the outside. The kind you'd use to lock someone in, not out. Garrett's hand trembled as he pulled on gloves and opened it. Inside, a space maybe 3 feet by 5 feet. A thin blanket on the floor. A plastic bucket in the corner with a lid. No window, no light switch. This was where a 5-year-old girl had slept for 18 months. Garrett stood there for a long moment. He didn't trust himself to speak. Judge appeared behind him, looked inside, said nothing. They didn't need words. The closet spoke for itself. In the office, Ledger found the files. A folder labeled Lily Legal contained bank statements, trust documents, and withdrawal records. Every dollar Wire had traced was right there in black and white. But it was the bottom of the drawer that made Ledger's blood run cold. Another folder, older, labeled Connor. Inside, a death certificate, a life insurance policy, and a photograph of a little boy with red hair and freckles, smiling at the camera like he didn't know what was coming. Connor Walsh, 7 years old, died January 2022, 3 years ago, almost to the day. Ledger called for Webb. The deputy looked at the folder, then at Brenda, who was standing in the living room with her arms crossed and her smile starting to crack. "Ms. Holloway, who is Connor Walsh?" Brenda's face went blank. "I don't know what you're talking about. We found his file in your desk, along with a life insurance policy that paid out after his death. That's old paperwork. I fostered several children. Some of them had difficult circumstances." Difficult circumstances. He died of exposure during a winter storm, while in your care. "It was an accident. The investigation cleared me." The investigation lasted 2 weeks. "Because there was nothing to find." Tessa spoke up from the kitchen. "Deputy Webb, you need to see this." They gathered around Brenda's laptop. It was still logged in because Brenda had never imagined anyone would look. Wire had already pulled up the browser history, but seeing it on her own computer, in her own house, made it different. Hypothermia survival time child. How long before frozen body found? Life insurance payout timeline, minor. Accidental death versus suspicious death investigation. Date of searches, November 14th, November 22nd, December 3rd, December 12th. 4 days before Lily was found behind the dumpster. Webb turned to Brenda. His voice was flat now. No more questions. No more patience. "Brenda Holloway, you are under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Brenda's smile finally died. "This is insane," she said. "She's a disturbed child. She lies. She manipulates. You're going to believe a 5-year-old over me?" "We're going to believe the evidence," Webb said. "Turn around, hands behind your back." "You can't do this. I'm on the board of 3 charities. I teach Sunday school. The mayor knows me personally." "Ma'am, turn around." Brenda's eyes swept the room, looking for an ally, looking for someone who would believe her smile. She found Garrett instead. "You," she said, "you did this. You turned them against me." Garrett didn't answer. He just pulled out his phone and showed her the screen. A photograph. Lily's drawing. The little girl with yellow hair. The angel in the leather jacket. "She's 5 years old," Garrett said quietly, "and she's more honest than you've ever been." Brenda's face twisted. For just a moment, the mask slipped completely. "She's worth more dead than alive," Brenda hissed. "Do you understand that? $500,000, and all I had to do was wait." The room went silent. Webb's hand tightened on the cuffs. "Ma'am, I strongly suggest you stop talking." "Why? You already think I'm a monster. Might as well know the truth. That kid ruined my life. Her parents were supposed to leave everything to me. We were sisters. But no, they put it in a trust for her. For a child who can't even tie her own shoes. So you decided to kill her." "I decided to wait 18 months for the insurance policy to vest. Then one cold night, one open window, One tragic accident. Brenda laughed. It was an ugly sound. Do you know how easy it is to make a child disappear? You just stop feeding them. Stop looking at them. Stop acknowledging they exist. Eventually they fade, like they were never there at all. Garrett felt Judge's hand on his shoulder. A warning. Stay calm. Don't give her anything. But it was Tessa who spoke next. And Connor Walsh? Did he fade too? Brenda's smile returned, colder than before. Connor was a test run. I needed to know if it would work, if anyone would ask questions. She shrugged. No one did. Webb finished reading her rights and led her to the cruiser. She didn't resist, didn't cry, didn't apologize. She just kept smiling, like she still thought she might win. Outside, the neighbors had gathered, watching, whispering. The same neighbors who'd seen Lily carrying heavy bags and thin gloves and told themselves it wasn't their business. Garrett walked past them without a word, but Ledger stopped, looked at an older woman in a bathrobe who was clutching a coffee mug and shaking her head. I always knew something was wrong, the woman said, but I never thought. You never thought, Ledger repeated. That's the problem, isn't it? Nobody ever thinks. They just look away. The woman's face crumpled. I called once. I reported it. And then what? They said they'd look into it. They never came back. So you stopped calling. I thought the system would handle it. Ledger's voice was tired, not angry, just tired. The system is people, and people failed that little girl every single day for 18 months. You included. He walked away. The woman stood there, coffee growing cold, watching the cruiser pull out of the driveway with Brenda Holloway in the back seat. At St. Francis, Lily was eating Jell-O. It was the first solid food she'd been able to keep down. Red Jell-O, the kind that came in little plastic cups with foil lids. She ate it slowly, savoring each bite like it might be her last. Reverend sat beside her, not talking, just present. That was his gift, knowing when words were needed and when silence was enough. Garrett appeared in the doorway. Lily looked up. Her eyes searched his face. Is she gone? Garrett walked to her bedside, crouched down so they were eye to eye. She's gone. She's never going to hurt you again. Lily's lower lip trembled. Promise? Promise. The tears came then, not loud sobs. Lily had learned long ago that loud crying meant punishment. These were quiet tears, streaming down her thin cheeks, dropping onto the hospital blanket. Garrett didn't tell her to stop, didn't tell her it was okay. He just sat there, steady as a rock, while a 5-year-old girl finally let herself feel safe enough to cry. After a while, Lily spoke again. The lady from the county came this morning. She asked about my family. What did you tell her? I said my mommy and daddy are in heaven, and my aunt is going to jail. Garrett almost smiled. That's about right. She asked if I have anyone else. I said, I don't know. Reverend leaned forward slightly. Would you like to find out? Lily looked at him, then at Garrett, then back at her Jell-O. I had a grandma once, before. She sent me birthday cards with butterflies on them. Do you remember her name? Grandma Ellie, but Aunt Brenda said she didn't want me anymore. She said Grandma Ellie was too old and too tired. Garrett and Reverend exchanged a look. What if we found out for sure? Garrett asked. What if we asked her ourselves? Lily's eyes went wide. You can do that? We can try. For the first time since she'd been found behind that dumpster, Lily smiled. A real smile, small and uncertain, but real. Okay, she whispered, but what if she says no? Garrett reached into his pocket and pulled out the tarnished silver locket. He'd been carrying it all morning, just like he'd promised. Then we figure out the next thing. But we don't stop trying, ever. He pressed the locket into her small hand. Lily clutched it to her chest. My mommy said the same thing once. She said Bennett's don't give up. Smart woman. She was the smartest. Lily paused. Will you help me remember her? Sometimes I forget what she looked like. Even with the picture, Garrett's throat tightened. Yeah, kid, I'll help you remember. Down the hall, Miriam Foster was on the phone. Eleanor Bennett? This is Miriam Foster with Oklahoma Family Services. I'm calling about your granddaughter, Lily. A pause, then a voice on the other end, older, shaking, barely controlled. Lily? Is she alive? She's alive. She's safe. She's asking about you. The sound that came through the phone was something between a sob and a prayer. I've been trying to find her for 18 months. Her aunt told the court I was unfit. She told me Lily didn't want to see me anymore. That wasn't true. I know that now, but no one would listen. No one would help me. Miriam's voice softened. Mrs. Bennett, someone's listening now. Can you get to St. Francis Medical Center in Tulsa? I'll be there in 2 hours. Drive safe. Miss Foster? Yes? Thank whoever found her. Thank them for me. Miriam looked through the glass of the pediatric ward, saw Garrett sitting beside Lily's bed, showing her something on his phone. A picture of a motorcycle, probably, teaching her the names of the parts. I will, Miriam said. I'll tell them. She hung up the phone and walked toward the cafeteria, where 197 men in leather were waiting for news. The story wasn't over yet, but for the first time, it felt like it might have a good ending. Eleanor Bennett arrived at St. Francis Medical Center at 2:17 p.m. She was 67 years old, with silver hair pulled back in a simple bun and hands that wouldn't stop shaking. She'd driven 112 miles from Bartlesville in a car that needed new brakes, and she'd cried for at least 80 of those miles. Miriam Foster met her in the lobby. Mrs. Bennett? Eleanor grabbed Miriam's hands like a drowning woman reaching for shore. Where is she? Please, I need to see her. She's resting right now, but I need to prepare you for what you're going to see. Eleanor's face tightened. I know what starvation looks like. I grew up during hard times. Just tell me she's alive. She's alive. She's stable. But she's been through more than any child should ever experience. I know. I knew something was wrong. I called the county 6 times. I wrote letters. I filed complaints. They told me Brenda was a good guardian. They told me to stop interfering. Miriam's voice softened. I read your file, Mrs. Bennett. You did everything right. The system failed you. The system failed my granddaughter. Yes, it did. Eleanor wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Can I see her now? There's one more thing. She's formed an attachment to the man who found her, a biker named Garrett Sullivan. He's been with her almost constantly since she was brought in. A biker? Yes, ma'am, and about 190 of his friends are in the parking lot right now. Eleanor blinked. Then unexpectedly she laughed. It was a wet, broken sound. My son married a woman who rode motorcycles, Laura. She had a Harley before Lily was born. Sold it to buy a crib. Eleanor's voice cracked. She would have loved knowing bikers saved her baby. They walked to the pediatric ward together. Miriam knocked softly on the door of room 312. Garrett looked up from his chair. Lily was asleep, her thin hands still clutching the silver locket. She's been out for about an hour, Garrett said quietly. First real sleep she's had. Eleanor stood in the doorway. Her whole body had gone still. Oh, baby, she whispered. Oh, my sweet baby girl. Lily's eyes fluttered open. For a moment, she didn't recognize the woman standing there. 18 months was a lifetime when you were 5 years old. Faces faded, voices blurred. Memory became a thing you couldn't trust. But then Eleanor spoke again. Lilybug? It's Grandma Ellie. Lily's breath caught. Grandma? I'm here, sweetheart. I'm finally here. Lily's face crumpled. Not with fear this time, with something bigger. Something that had been locked away for 18 months, waiting for permission to come out. You came, Lily sobbed. Aunt Brenda said you didn't want me anymore. She said you were too tired. Eleanor crossed the room in 3 steps and gathered Lily into her arms. Careful of the IV, careful of the monitors, but fierce in a way that only grandmothers can be. "I never stopped wanting you," Eleanor said, her voice breaking. "I never stopped looking. I called every week. I wrote letters. I drove to that house, and she wouldn't let me in. She said I was a burden. You are not a burden. You are my heart. You are the only piece of my son I have left." Lily buried her face in Eleanor's shoulder and cried. Not quiet tears this time, real sobs, the kind she'd been holding back for a year and a half because crying meant punishment, and punishment meant the closet. Garrett stood up slowly, started to move toward the door. "Wait," Lily said. He stopped. She reached out one hand toward him, still holding on to Eleanor with the other. "Don't go, please." Garrett looked at Eleanor. She nodded. "Stay," Eleanor said. "You saved her life. You're part of this now." Garrett sat back down. For a long time, no one spoke. The only sound was Lily crying, finally safely, in her grandmother's arms. 2 hours later, Judge called a meeting in the hospital chapel. The core team gathered: Garrett, Ledger, Wire, Doc, Reverend, and Shield. Deputy Webb joined them, along with Miriam Foster and a prosecutor named Rachel Torres, who'd been assigned to the case. "Here's where we stand," Rachel said. She was in her 40s, with sharp eyes and the kind of voice that commanded attention. "Brenda Holloway is being held on multiple charges: felony child neglect, unlawful imprisonment, theft by deception, insurance fraud." "What about attempted murder?" Garrett asked. "That's where it gets complicated. We have the search history, we have the calendar, but intent is hard to prove. Her attorney is already claiming those searches were research for a novel." "A novel," Ledger said flatly. "I know, it's insulting, but juries have believed worse." Wire spoke up. "What about Connor Walsh?" Rachel's face darkened. "That's the key. If we can prove a pattern, 2 children, same guardian, same circumstances, then the novel defense falls apart." "The state is reopening his case," Webb added. "Medical examiner's office is conducting a new review. But these things take time." "How much time?" "Weeks, maybe months." "Lily doesn't have months," Garrett said. "She needs to know this is over. She needs to stop looking at the door every time someone walks by." Rachel nodded. "I understand, and I'm pushing as hard as I can. But if we rush this and make mistakes, Brenda walks. Is that what you want?" No one answered, because the answer was obvious. Shield cleared his throat. "What about the civil side, the trust fund?" "Ledger's documentation is solid," Rachel said. "We've frozen the remaining assets, but there's only about 140,000 left. The rest is gone." "Gone where?" "The boat's been repossessed. The cabin deal fell through. The casino losses are just gone." Garrett felt his jaw tighten. "So she stole $300,000 from a 5-year-old and we can't get it back?" "We can get some of it, eventually. Restitution is part of sentencing, but actually collecting it, that's another story." Judge spoke for the first time. "What do you need from us?" Rachel looked around the room. "Witnesses, documentation, and patience. I know that's hard, but if you want Brenda Holloway to pay for what she did, we have to do this right." "We're not going anywhere," Judge said. "Whatever you need, as long as it takes." Rachel almost smiled. "I've been a prosecutor for 18 years. I've never had 197 bikers offer to help with a case." "First time for everything," Garrett said. The next 3 weeks were a study in patience. Lily moved from the hospital to a temporary foster placement while the kinship paperwork for Eleanor was processed. It was a good home, a retired teacher named Margaret who specialized in trauma cases, but Lily still woke up screaming most nights. Garrett visited every day. Sometimes he brought other brothers, Reverend, who taught Lily how to play checkers, or Doc, who explained her medications in words she could understand. But mostly it was just Garrett, sitting beside her, answering her questions about motorcycles and highways, and what it felt like to ride with the wind. Does it feel like flying? Lily asked one afternoon. Kind of. More like freedom, like nothing can catch you. I want to feel that someday. You will when you're bigger. Eleanor visited too, every single day, driving that 112 miles each way without complaint. She brought Lily things from home, photo albums, stuffed animals, a quilt that Laura had made when she was pregnant. Your mama sewed every stitch, Eleanor told her. She said she wanted you to sleep under something made with love. Lily ran her fingers over the fabric. It smells like her. I kept it in her old room. Couldn't bear to wash it. Don't ever wash it, please. I won't, baby, I promise. The kinship hearing was scheduled for January 15th, but on January 8th, the date Brenda had circled on her calendar, the date Lily was supposed to die, something unexpected happened. Wire called Garrett at 6 a.m. You need to get to the courthouse, now. What's wrong? Connor Walsh's mother is here, and she's ready to talk. Her name was Danielle Walsh. She was 34 years old with red hair and the kind of hollow eyes that come from years of unanswered questions. She'd driven all night from Kansas City when she heard the news about Brenda's arrest. Rachel Torres met with her in a conference room at the Tulsa County Courthouse. Garrett wasn't supposed to be there, but Shield argued that he had standing as a material witness, and Rachel didn't fight it. Mrs. Walsh, Rachel began, I understand you have information about your son's death. Danielle's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the table. I knew something was wrong, she said. From the beginning. Connor called me the week before he died. He said his foster mom was mean. He said she locked the food. Garrett's blood went cold. The same words, the exact same words. Did you report this? Rachel asked. I tried, but I had a drug conviction on my record. I was in recovery, but the court didn't care. They said Connor was better off with a stable guardian. Danielle's voice cracked. 3 months later, he was dead. What did the investigation find? Nothing. They said it was an accident. He wandered outside during a storm and got lost. But Connor was terrified of the dark. He never would have gone outside at night, not willingly. Did you tell the investigators that? Yes. They said I was grieving. They said I was looking for someone to blame. Rachel pulled out a file. Mrs. Walsh, we've obtained Brenda Holloway's financial records. 3 days after your son's death, she received a payout of $75,000 from a life insurance policy. She was the sole beneficiary. Danielle's face went white. She had insurance on my son? Yes. I didn't know. I never knew. The policy was taken out 2 months after Connor was placed with her. The same pattern we're seeing with Lily Bennett. Danielle started to cry. Not gentle tears, ugly, wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. She killed him. She killed my baby and nobody believed me. Garrett stood up. He couldn't sit still anymore. He walked to the window and stared out at the parking lot where a dozen motorcycles waited in the January cold. Connor Walsh, 7 years old, red hair and freckles. Lily Bennett, 5 years old, blonde hair and blue eyes. 2 children, same closets, same locks, same lies. One was dead, one was alive. The difference was 40 minutes behind a dumpster. Rachel's voice pulled him back. Mrs. Walsh, I need to ask you something difficult. Are you willing to testify? Danielle wiped her face. Will it put her in prison? It will help. Combined with the evidence in Lily's case, it establishes a pattern, premeditation, intent. Then yes, I'll testify. I'll tell everyone what she did to my son. Rachel nodded. Thank you. I know this isn't easy. Easy? Danielle laughed bitterly. I've been waiting 3 years for someone to believe me. Easy is the last word I'd use. The preliminary hearing was held on January 12th. Brenda Holloway appeared in an orange jumpsuit, her blonde hair unwashed, her smile nowhere to be seen. She'd hired a defense attorney named Marcus Webb, not the deputy, a different Webb, a slick lawyer from Oklahoma City who specialized in getting guilty people acquitted. The courtroom was standing room only. Local news cameras lined the hallway, and in the front row, separated by a half-dozen seats, sat two groups that couldn't have looked more different. On one side, Eleanor Bennett, Miriam Foster, and Danielle Walsh, three women bound by grief in the same monster. On the other, Garrett, Judge, and a rotating crew of brothers who took turns attending. They wore their cuts, their leather vests with the Hells Angels patches, not as intimidation, but as witness. They wanted Brenda to see them every time she turned around. Prosecutor Rachel Torres laid out the case methodically. The locked closet, the chained refrigerator, the padlocked pantry, the trust fund drained of $289,000, the life insurance policy worth $500,000, the browser searches, the circled calendar date, the recorded confession at the house, and then the twist that made even the seasoned reporters gasp, the Connor Walsh file. Your Honor, Rachel said, the state has evidence that this defendant has killed before. 3 years ago, a 7-year-old boy named Connor Walsh died of exposure while in her care. She received a $75,000 insurance payout 3 days later. Defense attorney Webb shot to his feet. Objection! That case was investigated and closed. My client was never charged. The case is being reopened, Rachel countered. New evidence has come to light. What new evidence? Rachel pulled out a document. Phone records showing that on the night Connor Walsh died, the defendant made 3 calls to the same number she called the night Lily Bennett was found, a weather hotline. She was checking the temperature. The courtroom went silent. Judge Whitaker leaned forward. Are you suggesting she was waiting for conditions that would ensure hypothermia? Yes, Your Honor. In both cases, the children were found outside during extreme cold. In both cases, the defendant had taken out life insurance policies. In both cases, she had financial motive. Defense attorney Webb tried to recover. This is speculation. Your client confessed, Rachel interrupted. On the day of her arrest, in front of 6 witnesses, she said, and I quote, "She's worth more dead than alive, $500,000, and all I had to do was wait." Brenda's face went rigid. That statement was made under duress, Webb said. My client was surrounded by law enforcement and social workers, not duress, documentation. Judge Whitaker held up her hand. That's enough. I've heard what I need to hear. She looked at Brenda. Ms. Holloway, you are bound over for trial on all charges. Bail is denied. You are remanded to custody pending further proceedings. Brenda's composure finally cracked. You can't do this. I have rights. I'm not a monster. Judge Whitaker's voice was ice. Ms. Holloway, you starved a 5-year-old child in a closet and left her to freeze behind a dumpster. You can argue about what you are at trial. The bailiff moved forward. Brenda screamed as they led her away. Not words, just sound. The sound of someone who'd finally run out of smiles. In the hallway afterward, Garrett found Danielle Walsh standing alone by a window. How do you feel? He asked. She laughed. It was hollow. I don't know. I thought I'd feel better. Vindicated, but I just feel tired. That's normal. Is it? I've been fighting for 3 years. 3 years of being told I was crazy, that I was looking for someone to blame, that I should move on. She turned to face him. You know what the worst part is? I believed them. For a little while, I thought maybe I was crazy. Maybe Connor really did just wander outside. You weren't crazy. I know that now, but I spent 2 years in therapy trying to accept something that wasn't true. Her eyes filled with tears. 2 years of grieving a death I was told was an accident. And the whole time, she was out there, living her life, teaching Sunday school, volunteering at the food bank. Garrett didn't have words for that. There were no words. Thank you, Danielle said suddenly. For what? For stopping, for finding Lily, for not looking away. She wiped her eyes. If you hadn't stopped at that gas station, Brenda would have gotten away with it again. and in a few years she would have done it to another child. Garrett thought about the weather, the late hour, the decision to stop for coffee instead of pushing through. "I almost didn't stop," he admitted. "I was tired. I just wanted to get home." "But you did stop." "Yeah, that's the difference between people who look away and people who don't. You stopped." She reached out and squeezed his hand once. Then she walked away, disappearing into the crowded courthouse hallway. Garrett stood there for a long moment watching her go. Two mothers, two children. One was gone forever. One was waiting to start her new life. The kinship hearing happened 3 days later. Eleanor Bennett sat at a table with her attorney, a woman named Patricia who specialized in family law and had taken the case pro bono after hearing the story on the news. Miriam Foster testified. Dr. Okonkwo testified. Garrett testified. And then Lily testified. She was too young to take the stand in a criminal trial, but kinship hearings had different rules. The judge, a woman named Margaret Chen, who'd been handling family cases for 20 years, asked Lily to sit in a comfortable chair near her desk. "Lily," Judge Chen said gently, "do you know who your grandmother is?" Lily nodded. She was wearing a new dress that Eleanor had bought her, purple with white flowers, because Lily said purple was her favorite color now. "That's her," Lily said, pointing at Eleanor. "That's Grandma Ellie. She sent me birthday cards with butterflies. Do you want to live with her?" Lily's eyes went to Garrett, then back to the judge. "Can I ask a question first?" Judge Chen smiled. "Of course. If I live with Grandma Ellie, can Garrett still visit me?" The courtroom went quiet. Garrett felt something catch in his throat. Judge Chen looked at Eleanor. Eleanor nodded. "I think that can be arranged," Judge Chen said. Lily smiled, that real smile, the one that had been buried for 18 months. "Then yes, I want to live with Grandma Ellie." The gavel came down. Eleanor Bennett was granted full legal custody of Lily Bennett, effective immediately. In the hallway, Eleanor hugged Lily so tight the little girl squeaked. "We're going home, baby. We're finally going home." Lily looked up at her grandmother with shining eyes. "Grandma?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Can we get a dog?" Eleanor laughed through her tears. "We can get whatever you want." Garrett watched them from a distance. Judge stood beside him. "You did good, brother. We did good. All of us." "What now?" Garrett watched Lily take Eleanor's hand, watched them walk toward the courthouse doors, watched the sunlight hit Lily's blonde hair and turn it gold. "Now we make sure this never happens again." Judge nodded slowly. "And Brenda? She goes to trial. She faces what she did, and she never touches another child." Lily turned at the door, saw Garrett watching, raised her hand in a wave. He waved back, and somewhere deep in his chest, in a place he thought was closed off forever, something opened. The trial began on February 3rd. Brenda Holloway sat at the defense table in a navy blue dress that her attorney had chosen specifically to make her look respectable. Her hair was styled. Her makeup was subtle. She looked like a Sunday school teacher, which was exactly the point. But the jury had already seen the photographs, the closet under the stairs, the bucket in the corner, the deadbolt on the outside of the door. They'd seen Lily's medical records, the weight charts, the frostbite documentation, and they'd heard the audio of Brenda's confession, played 3 times during opening statements. She's worth more dead than alive. No amount of navy blue could wash that away. Prosecutor Rachel Torres stood before the jury with quiet confidence. She didn't need to raise her voice. The evidence spoke loud enough. "Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear a lot of words over the next few days. Words like misunderstanding and discipline and troubled child. The defense will try to convince you that Brenda Holloway is a victim, a good woman who tried her best with a difficult situation." Rachel paused, let the silence build. "But evidence doesn't lie. Bank records don't lie. Browser searches don't lie. And a 5-year-old girl with frostbitten toes and visible ribs doesn't lie." She turned to face Brenda directly. This defendant didn't just neglect Lily Bennett. She designed her suffering. She profited from it. And on December 12th of last year, she left that child behind a dumpster to die, just like she left Connor Walsh to die 3 years before. Defense attorney Marcus Webb objected immediately. Your Honor, the Connor Walsh case is not on trial here. Judge Whitaker's voice was firm. The prosecution has established relevance. Overruled. Rachel continued. Over the next several days, you will hear testimony from doctors, social workers, law enforcement officers, and witnesses who saw what Brenda Holloway did when she thought no one was watching. And at the end of this trial, I will ask you to hold her accountable. Not for what she says she intended, for what she did. She sat down. Marcus Webb rose slowly. He was good. Garrett could see that immediately. The kind of lawyer who made guilty people seem sympathetic. My client is not a monster, Webb began. She's a woman who stepped up when her sister's child needed a home. She took in a traumatized girl after a devastating accident. She tried, imperfectly, yes, but she tried to provide structure and stability. He walked toward the jury box. You're going to hear testimony from a 5-year-old, a child who, by all accounts, has behavioral issues, who wanders, who makes up stories, who has been through trauma that would break most adults. Garrett's hands curled into fists. My client made mistakes. She admits that. But mistakes are not crimes. Strict parenting is not abuse. And one woman's struggle to cope with an impossible situation is not attempted murder. Webb turned back to face the courtroom. The prosecution wants you to see a villain. I'm going to show you a human being, and I'm going to ask you to consider, what would you have done faced with the same circumstances? He sat down. Judge Whitaker looked at Rachel. Call your first witness. The prosecution calls Dr. Amara Okonkwo. Dr. Okonkwo took the stand with the calm authority of someone who testified in dozens of cases. She walked the jury through Lily's condition when she was brought into the ER, the body temperature, the malnutrition, the old bruises, the developmental delays. In your medical opinion, Rachel asked, was this the result of one bad night? Absolutely not. The physical findings were consistent with chronic, systematic neglect over an extended period, at least 12 to 18 months. And the hypothermia? Severe. Another 15 to 20 minutes of exposure, and we would have been discussing permanent organ damage or death. Thank you, doctor. No further questions. Webb rose for cross-examination. Dr. Okonkwo, you're not a child psychologist, correct? No, I'm an emergency medicine physician. So you can't speak to Lily's behavioral issues? Her tendency to wander? I can speak to the physical evidence of her condition, but not her mental state. Her mental state was consistent with a child in crisis. Fear, confusion, hypervigilance. Could those symptoms also be consistent with a child who has behavioral problems? Who acts out? Who runs away? Dr. Okonkwo's eyes went hard. Mr. Webb, I've been practicing medicine for 23 years. I know the difference between a troubled child and a tortured one. Lily Bennett was tortured. The courtroom stirred. Webb changed tactics. No further questions. The second day brought the forensic evidence. Wire had prepared everything meticulously. Chain of custody documented, timestamps verified, every digital file authenticated. He testified for 2 hours about browser searches, calendar entries, and financial records. And these searches, Rachel asked, holding up printed screenshots. Hypothermia survival time child. How long before frozen body found? When were these made? November 14th, November 22nd, December 3rd, and December 12th. The last one was 4 days before Lily was found. What else was searched on December 12th? Weather forecast Broken Arrow, overnight low temperature December, and gas station locations Route 412. Rachel let that sink in. She was planning it, Rachel said, selecting the location, checking the weather, making sure conditions were right. Objection, Webb called. Speculation. Withdrawn. No further questions. Webb's cross-examination was aggressive. Mr. Harrison, you're not a police officer, correct? No. You're a member of a motorcycle club. Yes. The Hells Angels. Yes. A organization with a documented history of criminal activity. Rachel stood. Objection. Relevance. Goes to witness credibility, Your Honor. Judge Whitaker considered. I'll allow it, briefly. Webb continued. Isn't it true that you accessed Mrs. Holloway's computer without authorization? No. I assisted law enforcement in processing evidence that was obtained through a legal search warrant, but you were physically present during the search. As a civilian consultant, at the request of Sheriff Hutchins. A civilian consultant with expertise in, what exactly? Digital forensics. I spent 15 years in IT security before I retired. Webb paused. That wasn't the answer he'd expected. No further questions. On the third day, Danielle Walsh took the stand. She was shaking when she sat down. 3 years of grief and rage and unanswered questions, all of it visible in her trembling hands. Rachel approached gently. Mrs. Walsh, can you tell the court about your son Connor? Danielle's voice cracked. He was 7 years old, red hair, freckles. He loved dinosaurs and baseball and... She stopped, swallowed. He was my whole world. And he was placed in Brenda Holloway's care? Yes, I had a drug conviction. I was in recovery, but the court said Connor needed a stable home while I got back on my feet. How long was he with the defendant? 4 months. He died in January 2022. Can you tell the court what happened? Danielle closed her eyes. They said he wandered outside during a snowstorm. They said he got lost. They said it was an accident. Did you believe that? No. Connor was terrified of the dark. He never would have gone outside at night, not willingly. Did you report your concerns? I tried, but I was just a recovering addict. Nobody listened. Webb objected. Your Honor, this is hearsay and irrelevant to the current charges. It establishes pattern, Your Honor, Rachel countered. Same defendant, same circumstances, same result. Judge Whitaker nodded. Overruled. Continue. Rachel turned back to Danielle. Mrs. Walsh, did you know that the defendant had taken out a life insurance policy on your son? No, I found out 2 days ago. How did that make you feel? Danielle's face twisted. Like I'd been stabbed. She made money off my son's death. $75,000. And nobody thought to investigate that. Objection, Webb said. Emotional testimony. Overruled. The witness may express her feelings. Rachel pressed forward. One more question, Mrs. Walsh. Looking at the defendant now, what do you want to say to her? Webb shot up. Objection. This is a trial, not a therapy session. But Danielle was already speaking. You killed my son. Her voice shook with rage. You killed him and you got away with it. And then you did the same thing to another child, another mother's baby. Tears streamed down her face. I hope you rot. The courtroom exploded in murmurs. Judge Whitaker banged her gavel. Order! Order in the court! Webb demanded a mistrial. Judge Whitaker denied it, but the damage was done. The jury had seen Danielle Walsh's face. They'd heard her words, and they'd looked at Brenda Holloway while she said them. Brenda hadn't flinched, hadn't reacted, hadn't shown a single sign of remorse. That, more than anything, told the jury what kind of person they were dealing with. On the fourth day, the guilty witnesses testified. Derek, the gas station cashier, took the stand with visible shame. I saw her, he admitted. She was standing by the pumps. Her lips were already changing color, and I told myself someone else would handle it. Why didn't you call for help? Rachel asked. I don't know. I was tired. It was late. I didn't want to get involved in something that wasn't my business. And now? Derek's voice broke. Now I can't sleep. I see her face every time I close my eyes. That little girl almost died because I didn't make a phone call. Patricia Simmons, the neighbor, testified next. I heard crying some nights. I saw Lily carrying heavy bags to the garage in clothes that didn't fit. I knew something was wrong. Did you report it? I called once, 3 months ago. They came out, Brenda smiled, they left. Patricia wiped her eyes. She told me if I kept meddling, she'd make sure the sheriff knew I was trespassing. I stopped calling. Why? Because I thought the county knew better than me. Because I thought if professionals saw it and did nothing, what was my voice going to change? Melissa Grant, the Sunday school teacher's aide, was last. Lily came to class hungry every single week. I reported it to the church leadership. They said Brenda was a pillar of the community. They said I was making mountains out of molehills. How did that make you feel? Complicit, like I'd chosen convenience over a child's life. One by one, they testified. One by one, they admitted their failure. And one by one, the jury saw how easy it was to look away and how devastating the consequences could be. On the 5th day, it was Lily's turn. She wasn't testifying in the courtroom. Child witnesses in abuse cases gave testimony via closed-circuit video to protect them from facing their abusers directly. But the feed was broadcast to the jury, and they could see every expression on her face. A child advocate sat beside her. Garrett watched from the gallery, his heart hammering. Lily, the advocate said gently, can you tell us about living with your aunt? Lily's small voice came through the speakers. She locked the food. She said, I cost too much. What happened when you ate without permission? She put me in the closet, sometimes for a long time. How long? I don't know, until I was quiet. She said quiet girls get out faster. The advocate continued carefully. Lily, do you remember the night Mr. Sullivan found you? Lily nodded. Aunt Brenda drove me to the gas station. She said, wait here and I could sleep after. Did she say when she was coming back? No, she just drove away. How did you feel? Lily's eyes filled with tears. Scared, cold. I tried to ask people for help, but they didn't stop. And then Mr. Sullivan found you. Yes, he wrapped me in his jacket. He carried me inside. He said I was safe. Did you believe him? Lily thought about it. Not at first, but then he stayed. He didn't leave. Even when I fell asleep, he was still there when I woke up. The advocate glanced at her notes. One more question, Lily. Do you know why your aunt left you at that gas station? Lily's face went still, old beyond her years. She wanted me to go away, like Connor. The courtroom went silent. Lily, the advocate said slowly, how do you know about Connor? I heard her on the phone once. She said it worked before. She said no one asked questions. Webb was on his feet. Objection! Hearsay! Judge Whitaker's voice was quiet. Overruled. The witness is relating her own experience. Rachel stood. No further questions, Your Honor. Webb approached the screen carefully. He knew one wrong move would turn the jury against him completely. Lily, do you ever make up stories? No. Never? Aunt Brenda said I did, but I don't. I just tell what happened. Sometimes what happened and what we remember can be different, can't they? Lily's eyes went hard. 5 years old, and she looked at the defense attorney like she could see through him. I remember the closet. I remember being hungry. I remember being cold. Her voice didn't waver. I remember everything. Webb had nothing. He sat down. Judge Whitaker called for a recess. In the hallway, Garrett found Eleanor Bennett standing alone, her face wet with tears. She's so strong, Eleanor whispered. After everything that woman did to her, she's still so strong. She gets it from you, Garrett said. Eleanor shook her head. She gets it from Laura. My son married a fighter. She looked at Garrett. Thank you for staying with her, for not giving up. I couldn't have left even if I wanted to. Why? Garrett thought about the question. The real answer was complicated. Something about purpose, about redemption, about a lifetime of looking away from things he shouldn't have. Because she asked me not to, he said finally, and nobody had listened to her in a long time. Closing arguments came on the sixth day. Rachel Torres stood before the jury one final time. You've heard testimony from doctors, from social workers, from law enforcement. You've heard from the witnesses who looked away and who have to live with that choice. You've heard from a mother whose son died in the same way, at the same hands. She paused. And you've heard from Lily Bennett herself, 5 years old, who slept in a closet, who was denied food, who was left behind a dumpster on a December night to die. Rachel walked toward the defense table, stood directly in front of Brenda. Brenda Holloway wants you to believe she's a victim, a well-meaning guardian overwhelmed by a difficult child. But victims don't lock pantries. Victims don't search for hypothermia survival times. Victims don't circle dates on calendars and write, "Accident must look natural." She turned back to the jury. Brenda Holloway is not a victim. She's a predator. She targeted vulnerable children, first Connor Walsh, then Lily Bennett. She isolated them. She starved them. She profited from their suffering. And when the money ran out, she tried to collect on their deaths. Rachel's voice dropped. She would have succeeded with Lily if a man hadn't stopped for coffee at the right gas station, at the right time, on the right night. Lily Bennett would be dead, and Brenda Holloway would be $500,000 richer. She let that sink in. Don't let her get away with it again. Find her guilty, on all counts. Marcus Webb gave it his best shot. He talked about reasonable doubt, about a traumatized child's unreliable memory, about a grieving woman who made mistakes but didn't deserve to have her life destroyed. But even as he spoke, Garrett could see the jury's faces. They'd made up their minds. The deliberation took 4 hours and 17 minutes. When the jury filed back in, not one of them looked at Brenda Holloway. That's how Garrett knew. Judge Whitaker read the verdict aloud. On the charge of felony child neglect, guilty. Brenda's face went white. On the charge of unlawful imprisonment, guilty. Her hands started shaking. On the charge of theft by deception, guilty. Her attorney put a hand on her arm. She shook it off. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, guilty. Brenda stood up so fast her chair crashed backward. "This is wrong," she screamed. "She's lying. She's a child. Children lie." Judge Whitaker banged her gavel. "Miss Holloway, sit down. I gave that girl a home. I took her in when nobody else would. And this is how I'm repaid?" Bailiff, restrain the defendant. 2 officers moved toward her. Brenda backed away, her composed mask shattered completely. "You don't understand. None of you understand. Do you know what it's like to raise someone else's child? Do you know what it costs? The money was supposed to be mine. My sister promised." The officers grabbed her arms. She fought them, twisting, screaming. "I did what I had to do. I did what anyone would do." Judge Whitaker's voice cut through the chaos. "Get her out of my courtroom." They dragged Brenda toward the side door. She looked back once, not at the jury, not at the judge, but at the gallery, at Garrett. "You," she spat, "you ruined everything." Garrett held her gaze, didn't flinch, didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Brenda Holloway stood before Judge Whitaker in an orange jumpsuit, her hair unwashed, her eyes hollow. The navy blue dress was gone. The Sunday school smile was gone. All that remained was what she'd always been underneath. Judge Whitaker read the sentence slowly. For felony child neglect, 8 years. For unlawful imprisonment, 5 years consecutive. For theft by deception, 7 years consecutive. For attempted murder in the first degree, 15 years consecutive. Rachel had pushed for more, but the judge wasn't finished. Additionally, this court is recommending that the state pursue charges in the death of Connor Walsh. Based on the evidence presented at this trial, there is sufficient cause to believe the defendant is responsible for that child's death as well. Brenda said nothing. Her face was blank. Total sentence, 35 years. No possibility of parole for 20 years. Restitution to be determined. And Ms. Holloway? Brenda looked up. If I could give you more, I would. You don't deserve to ever walk free again. The gavel came down. Brenda was led away in chains. She didn't scream this time. Didn't fight. Didn't speak. She just walked, one foot in front of the other, into the rest of her life. In the gallery, Danielle Walsh was crying. 3 years of unanswered questions, finally answered. Eleanor Bennett held Lily's hand. The little girl had insisted on being there for the sentencing. She needed to see it end. Is she going away forever? Lily asked. Eleanor squeezed her hand. For a very, very long time. Good. Garrett stood at the back of the courtroom, watching the door close behind Brenda Holloway. Judge appeared beside him. It's over. Garrett shook his head. No, it's just beginning. What do you mean? Garrett looked at Lily, at Eleanor, at Danielle Walsh, at Derek and Patricia and Melissa, and all the other people who'd learned too late what it cost to look away. This never should have happened, Garrett said. The system failed, over and over again. Teachers, neighbors, social workers, they all saw something. They all did nothing. You can't change that. No, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again. Judge studied him. What are you thinking? Garrett didn't answer right away. He watched Lily walk out of the courtroom holding her grandmother's hand. Watched her turn back once and wave at him. That small wave that meant more than any words. I'm thinking, Garrett said slowly, that we need to build something. Something that helps kids like Lily before they end up behind dumpsters. Before it's almost too late. Judge nodded. The club would support that. I know. They walked out of the courthouse together, into the February sunlight, into a world that looked exactly the same as it had before, but felt completely different. Because somewhere in Bartlesville, a little girl was finally going home. And somewhere in Oklahoma County Jail, a monster was facing the rest of her life in a cell. Justice didn't fix everything, but it was a start. 6 months passed. Lily Bennett turned 6 years old in a yellow house on Walnut Street in Bartlesville. She had her own bedroom now, a real bedroom, with a window that opened and a door that never locked from outside. The walls were painted purple because Lily had chosen the color herself. Eleanor had let her hold the brush. Some nights, Lily still woke up screaming. She would bolt upright in bed, heart pounding, convinced she was back in the closet, convinced the darkness was closing in, convinced that if she made a sound, something terrible would happen. But then Eleanor would appear in the doorway, and she would sit on the edge of Lily's bed, and she would hold her hand until the shaking stopped. You're safe, Eleanor would whisper. You're home. It took time for Lily to believe it. Dr. Nina Reyes, her therapist, said that was normal. Trauma doesn't heal in a straight line, she explained to Eleanor during one of their sessions. Some days will feel like progress. Some days will feel like starting over. The important thing is that she knows she's not alone. Lily wasn't alone. Garrett visited every week, sometimes twice. He'd pull into Eleanor's driveway on his motorcycle, and Lily would run to the window to watch him park. She still loved the sound. That deep rumble that used to terrify her now meant something different. Safety, arrival, someone keeping their promise. Teach me about the engine again, Lily would say, dragging him to the garage where Eleanor's old sedan sat unused. You already know more than most adults. I want to know everything. So Garrett would crouch beside her and point to parts and explain what they did. Carburetor, exhaust, transmission. Lily absorbed it all with the intensity of a child who'd spent too long being told she wasn't worth teaching anything. One afternoon, she asked the question he'd been waiting for. Garrett, why did you stop? He looked at her. What do you mean? That night, at the gas station, you could have just kept going. Why did you stop? Garrett thought about it. The truth was complicated. Something about fate, about timing, about a cup of coffee he didn't even want. I heard you, he said finally. You were tapping on the dumpster, this little sound, tap, 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 and I couldn't walk away from it. Lily nodded slowly. I was trying to stay awake. My hands were too cold to knock, so I just tapped. That tapping saved your life. No, Lily looked at him with those blue eyes. Still old, still knowing too much. You saved my life. The tapping was just how I called for help. Garrett didn't have words for that, so he just pulled her into a hug, careful, gentle, the way he'd learned she needed. Don't ever stop calling, he said. No matter what, someone will hear you. The Clearwater Children's Fund launched in March. Judge had handled the paperwork. Ledger had set up the financials. Wire had built the website. And 197 Hells Angels had contributed the seed money. Everything from $20 bills to checks that made Garrett's eyes water. The fund wasn't about bikers being heroes. It was about building something that would outlast them. Emergency winter supplies for at-risk kids. Therapy funding for abuse survivors. Legal assistance for grandparents and relatives fighting to rescue children from dangerous guardians. Training programs for teachers and neighbors, the people who saw warning signs and didn't know what to do. Reverend spoke at the launch event, his quiet voice carrying across a community center packed with people. We can't save every child, he said, but we can make it harder for them to fall through the cracks. We can teach people to look, to ask questions, to pick up the phone when something doesn't feel right. He paused. Because the difference between a child who lives and a child who dies isn't always a dramatic rescue. Sometimes it's just one person saying, I see you, and I'm not looking away. Eleanor stood in the back, holding Lily's hand. Grandma, Lily whispered, that's about me, isn't it? It's about all the kids like you, the ones who need someone to notice. Lily thought about that. I want to help them. You already are, sweetheart. Just by being here, by being brave enough to tell the truth. 2 weeks later, Garrett rode back to the Clearwater fuel stop. He hadn't been there since that December night. Part of him didn't want to go. The memory was still too raw, too close. But something pulled him back. Derek was working the register. He looked different now. Older somehow, though only 6 months had passed. He'd completed child safety training. He'd volunteered at a local shelter. He'd done everything he could to make up for the night he'd looked away. Hey, Derek said when Garrett walked in. Hey, coffee? Yeah. Derek poured it, slid it across the counter. I think about her every day, Derek said quietly. Every single day. She's doing good, living with her grandmother, starting to heal. Derek nodded. His eyes were wet. I could have saved her 3 hours of freezing. All I had to do was make a phone call. You know that now. I knew it then. I just didn't do it. Garrett took a sip of his coffee. It tasted the same as it had that night, burnt and bitter. You can't change what happened, Garrett said, but you can change what happens next. How? By not looking away again, by teaching other people not to look away. Derek reached under the counter and pulled out a laminated sign. He held it up so Garrett could read it. If you see a child alone, ask. Don't assume someone else will. I made it myself, Derek said. Hung it by the front door. Made copies for every gas station in a 20-mile radius. Garrett looked at the sign, then at Derek. Good. It's not enough. It's a start. That same month, the state of Oklahoma officially charged Brenda Holloway with second-degree murder in the death of Connor Walsh. The medical examiner's new review had found what the original investigation missed. Evidence that Connor's exposure wasn't accidental. Bruising patterns consistent with being forced outside. Ligature marks on his wrist that suggested he'd been restrained. Danielle Walsh called Garrett when she heard the news. They're finally listening, she said, her voice cracking. After 3 years. They're finally listening. How do you feel? I don't know. Relieved, angry, sad. She laughed bitterly. Mostly angry. It shouldn't have taken another child almost dying for people to believe me. No, it shouldn't have. But I'm glad they believe me now. I'm glad Connor's name will be part of this, so people remember that Lily wasn't her first victim. Brenda's second trial was scheduled for September. She faced life without parole. Some things took time, but justice, eventually, had a way of finding the truth. Lily's 6th birthday party was small. Eleanor had asked what she wanted, and Lily's answer was simple: chocolate cake, purple balloons, and the people who mattered. That meant Eleanor, Miriam Foster, Dr. Reyes, and Garrett. He arrived with a wrapped gift under his arm, small, rectangular, carefully chosen. Lily tore off the paper with the enthusiasm of a child who'd never been allowed to rip anything before. Inside was a silver locket, new, shining, with space for 2 photographs. Your old locket holds your past, Garrett said. This one's for your future, for the memories you're going to make. Lily stared at it, her fingers trembled. Can I put pictures in it? Whatever pictures you want. She thought about it, then looked up at Eleanor. Can we take a picture, right now, you and me? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Of course, baby. Miriam took the photo. Eleanor and Lily, cheek to cheek, both smiling. 3 days later, Garrett brought the developed print back. He helped Lily slide it into the locket, carefully, like it was the most important thing in the world. What about the other side? Eleanor asked. Lily looked at Garrett. Can you be in it? Garrett's throat tightened. He didn't trust his voice, so he just nodded. The second photo was taken that afternoon. Garrett and Lily, standing by his motorcycle, both squinting against the sun. 2 pictures, 2 pieces of her life. The past she'd survived, the future she was building. Summer turned to fall. The leaves changed. The air grew cold. And one evening, Lily asked Garrett a question that stopped him in his tracks. Do you think my mom and dad would be proud of me? They were sitting on Eleanor's porch, watching the sunset. Lily was wrapped in a blanket, the quilt her mother had made, the one that still smelled like Laura after all these years. Garrett took his time answering. Yeah, he said finally, I think they'd be proud of everything you've done. Even the scared parts? Especially the scared parts. Being scared and doing it anyway. That's what brave means. Lily pulled the quilt tighter. I still get scared sometimes, when I wake up in the dark, or when I hear someone lock a door. That's okay. Scars take time to heal. Do they ever go all the way away? Garrett thought about his own scars, the ones on his hands from years of mechanic work, the ones inside from things he didn't talk about. No, he said honestly, but they fade, and someday you'll look at them and remember that you survived, that you were stronger than the thing that hurt you. Lily nodded slowly. Garrett? Yeah? I'm glad you stopped for coffee that night. He smiled. Me too, kid. Me too. The story of Lily Bennett traveled further than anyone expected. News stations picked it up, then podcasts, then a documentary filmmaker who wanted to tell the whole truth, not just the rescue, but the system failures that almost killed her. The guilty witnesses agreed to participate. Derek, Patricia, Melissa, all of them standing in front of cameras and admitting what they should have done. I want people to see themselves in us, Patricia said. I want them to realize how easy it is to convince yourself that someone else will handle it. Maple Ridge Elementary changed its policies. No homeschool withdrawals without an in-person interview and home visit. Mandatory reporting training for all staff. Anonymous tip lines posted in every classroom. The church where Brenda taught Sunday school established a child protection committee. Background checks, supervision requirements. No more looking the other way because someone volunteered at the food bank. And in Bartlesville, a small yellow house on Walnut Street became proof that broken things could be put back together. Not perfectly, not without cracks, but whole enough to hold love again. On the one-year anniversary of the night Garrett found her, Lily asked to visit the Clearwater fuel stop. Eleanor was hesitant. So was Dr. Reyes. But Garrett understood. She needs to see it, he told them. She needs to stand where it happened and know she's not that scared little girl anymore. They drove there together, Eleanor's car this time, not a motorcycle. The weather was cold, but Lily wore a proper coat, proper boots, proper gloves. She stood behind the building, looking at the spot where she'd curled against the dumpster. "It looks smaller than I remember," she said quietly. "Scary things always do, once you're not scared anymore." Lily reached into her pocket and pulled out her old locket, the tarnished one with her parents' photo inside. She'd kept it all this time, even though she had the new one now. "I want to leave something here," she said, "for the other kids, the ones who might end up in the same place." "What do you want to leave?" Lily thought about it. Then she knelt down and placed the old locket against the base of the dumpster. "So they know someone made it out," she said. "So they know it's possible to survive." Eleanor was crying. Garrett's eyes were wet too. Lily stood up and looked at the building, at the neon sign, at the gas pumps where she tried to ask strangers for help. "I'm not scared anymore," she said, and for the first time, Garrett believed her. If you're listening to this story and you think it's about motorcycles and leather jackets and dramatic rescues, you're wrong. It's about a 5-year-old girl who tapped on a dumpster when her hands were too frozen to knock. It's about the people who drove past her, good people, decent people, who told themselves someone else would stop. It's about what happens when one person decides that someone else isn't good enough, that this child, this moment, this cry for help deserves an answer. You don't need 197 motorcycles to change a life. You need eyes that see, ears that listen, a voice that speaks up when silence is easier. Somewhere right now there's a child standing in a parking lot, a child sitting in a classroom with an empty lunchbox, a child whose eyes go flat when someone mentions home. That child is waiting for you to notice. Will you? Subscribe if you believe children deserve to be seen. Comment, "I see you," and tell me, who was the person who noticed you when you needed it most? Share this with someone who works with kids, teaches kids, or just needs to remember that looking away has consequences. Because Lily Bennett survived, Connor Walsh didn't. The only difference between them was 40 minutes, and one person who refused to look away. Be that person. Every child deserves at least one.